Hello everybody and welcome back to 3DAF. My name is Zander, and today we're going to hop right back into our series on G-code programming by talking about M-codes. Now over the course of the day we're going to cover several important M-codes that are generic for most machines. It's important to remember that M-codes themselves can be very machine specific and may not apply to all types of machines. So let's get into it. Over the course of this episode, we're going to be talking about several different M-codes, and they'll be timestamped down below so you can jump right to them. So first of all, what are M-codes? Second, stop codes M00, M01, end codes M02 and M30, spindle codes M03, M04, and M05, automatic tool change M06, coolant codes M07, M08, and M09, spindle orientation M19, and subprogram codes M98 and 99. So what are M-codes anyways? Well, M-codes, or miscellaneous codes, are codes that are used to support the G-code language. These codes are non-geometry machine functions, which means that they're not going to affect how you move on the X, Y, Z, A, B, C, or whatever other axis you might happen to have on your fancy machine. There are two different types of M-codes. There are standard codes that apply to most conventional CNC machines with some notable exceptions. And then there are machine-specific codes that come directly from the supplier. Different types of machines utilize M-codes differently based on the needs of the machine and based on the technology that the machine's built around. Now let's take a look into the most common M-codes. And we're going to start off today by looking at stop codes. These codes stop the machine for inspection, checking, manual operations, chip clearing, etc., and are resumable by pressing the start button. So first of all, we got M00, which is a compulsory program stop. This means regardless of whether the optional stop button has been selected on the controller, the machine will stop at this point. Then we have M01, which is an optional stop. Optional seems pretty self-explanatory. And with the optional stop M01 on, if you hit the optional stop button on your controller, it will stop at these points in the program. If you have not hit that button on your controller, it will just ignore it. And now on to end codes, M02 and M30. End codes represent the formal end of a program. M02 ends the program and just stops at the last line without recycling to the top. And M30, which is much more common these days, ends the program and brings the cursor all the way back up to the top of the program. And as a quick bit of fun, back in the day when we used tapes for CNC, well, tape-made programs, it would actually rewind the whole spool, which was quite an experience. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, spindle codes! That's your M03, M04, and M05. Spindle codes tell the machine how it's going to utilize the spindle, so this is more important in machines that have spindles. Obviously, if you're running a 3D printer, you're not going to use this one as much. These codes are typically used in conjunction with the S, or speed, or RPM, spindle speed word, with an accompanying value. So, first we got M03, which is clockwise spindle rotation. And this tells the spindle to spin in a clockwise direction at the supplied RPM. This is the most common direction of spin for conventional machining. Next, we have M04, or counterclockwise, or anti-clockwise for my European friends, spindle rotation. This turns the spindle counterclockwise at the supplied RPM. Now, there are definitely times to use M04, especially with stuff like backing out taps and so on and so forth, but in conventional machining, you require special tools to move counterclockwise and actually cut effectively, as most cutters are designed to cut clockwise. Finally, we have M05, which is spindle stop, which is literally hit the brakes, let's stop that spindle right now. And now my personal favorite, automatic tool change, M06. So, M06 is used for automatic tool change. It is used in conjunction with the T word for tool number, which indicates the tool that's being requested. Now, fun story, there's a lot of debate about this. Do you put the tool number or the M06 first? What I found in most controllers is that it doesn't matter, and either way, the controller will figure it out. But I'm still a personal fan of putting my T number first. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. In addition, on some controllers, you can actually use a P word as well, representing the pod number, which will pull the tool specifically from that pod. And when the M06 code is read, The automatic tool changer runs a subprogram that is specific to the machine, removing the tool and replacing it with the requested tool. And now let's take a look into coolant codes. So this is your M07, M08, and M09. So Coolant Codes tells the machine what type of coolant strategy you would like to use with the specific operation. M07 is a little bit more open-ended. I have seen it both represent air blast and mist, depending on the machine configuration. Either way, the main thing is that you're focusing more on direct chip removal and a little less on cooling your tool. Then we have M08, which is flood coolant. This is your maximum flow of coolant. If you've got a coolant skirt on there, it's going to really hose, or if you have several coolant lines going, it's going to hose through. And depending on the machine specification, this may also turn on your through coolant, although there are specific codes for that for different controllers. And finally, we have M09, which is to turn the coolant off. This will stop the coolant spray, which is typically used at tool changes and at the end of programs. This next one's a little less known, and it's very machine specific, but it is still fairly universal code, and that is spindle orientation, M19. So if you have a spindle that requires tooling to go in a certain direction, you can enter the M19 code, and that will force the spindle to rotate so that way the dogs are facing you directly with the proper orientation. So that way you can insert a tool directly into the spindle and shoot it back into the tool changer without any issues. And finally, we have Subprogram Codes M98 and M99. Subprogram codes notify the machine that it will be running a subprogram within the existing program. This code is used with a P word, which correlates to an O program name. M98, subprogram call, notifies the machine that it will be running a subprogram and tells it which subprogram to run. M99, subprogram end, is the code in the subprogram that notifies the controller to switch back to the main program. Alright, that wraps up our episode on M-code programming. Hopefully you've learned something cool, new, and exciting that you can take away to your daily, to your hobby, or even just tell your friends about it. Next week, Zander will be teaching an episode on ABS, how to program it, what are the pros, cons, flaws, everything else, so make sure you catch that. And the following week, we will be doing an episode on movement codes and G-codes. So that's your G00, G01, 02, 03. No, we're not going to do 04. We'll have to dwell about it. But that will be what's coming up next. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button, follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, all those other fun platforms. So thank you and have a great day. In case you haven't noticed, other Zander dresses fancy, sophisticated, knows M codes. Zander, on the other hand, dresses like a hobo and talks about 3D printing. Which do you think is better? Let us know in the comments.